Welcome to Xi Jinping Briefing. The content of the briefing includes US-led AI declaration on military use sees 45 countries join, but not China. PE firms get trapped in China after $1.5 trillion betting spree. First FT, Taiwan looms over summit aimed at easing US-China tensions. Tuesday briefing, looking to a Biden-Xi meeting. US-China, one summit, two different goals for Biden and Xi. US-led AI declaration on military use sees 45 countries join, but not China. South China Morning Post. 45 countries, including key American allies and partners, have joined a US-led effort to create a framework for the responsible military use of AI. Notably absent from the declaration is China, which earlier this month signed a declaration on managing the risks of AI with 28 countries, including the US and the EU. The US-led initiative contains 10 measures designed to build an international framework for responsible military AI use, including sharing best practices and capacity-building activities. US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are expected to pledge a ban on the use of AI in autonomous weaponry during their meeting this week. PE firms get trapped in China after $1.5 trillion betting spree. Bloomberg. Private equity firms are struggling to offload investments in China as secondary buyers demand discounts of 30% to over 60% in a market that is now considered risky. Many firms are exploring alternative strategies such as setting up continuation funds or delaying sales. The lack of easy exits has shifted China from a frontier market for buyouts to an uncertain landscape for long-term investing. Demand for Chinese assets has fallen over the past few years as the economy struggles to regain traction and concerns mount over Xi Jinping's political direction. First FT, Taiwan looms over summit aimed at easing US-China tensions. Financial Times. US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are expected to discuss Taiwan when they meet in San Francisco tomorrow, in an effort to stabilize relations between the two nations. The meeting comes 1 year after the leaders' first meeting at the G20 summit. US officials have stated that the summit will not produce major agreements, particularly due to tensions over Taiwan. The focus of the talks will be on managing competition, preventing conflict, and keeping communication channels open. Tuesday briefing, looking to a Biden-Xi meeting. New York Times. US President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, will meet today to discuss the future of US-China relations. The summit will not end the standoff between the two countries, but it signals that both leaders want to continue relations despite trade tensions, sanctions, and questions about Taiwan. The US officials have emphasized that the two countries are competitors rather than zero-sum rivals and that they are economically interdependent. The US hopes to resume military communications with China that were broken off after Representative Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan last year. The US is also seeking cooperation on efforts to stop climate change as well as fentanyl trafficking. China is a major source of the drug. Many Western companies say it is becoming increasingly difficult to operate in China, but that might not matter for Xi. Images of the Chinese leader breaking bread with American CEOs may be valuable enough for his audience at home. US-China, one summit, two different goals for Biden and Xi. Nikkei Asia. US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping are set to meet on the sidelines of the APEC summit in San Francisco in an attempt to heal their damaged relationship. The meeting comes amid increasing tensions between the Chinese and US militaries, and as Washington continues to add to its trade entity blacklist that regulates the export of advanced chip-making equipment to China. The two superpowers hold fundamentally different views on the future of their relationship, with Washington wanting to erect guardrails to ensure competition does not turn into conflict, while Beijing wants to know whether the US will welcome an economically stronger China. The talks are an attempt to show the world that the two leaders are trying to find common ground, but experts say it is unlikely that any substantial progress will be made. From Gaza to Ukraine, wars and crises are piling up. Economist. The world is currently facing a concatenation of crises, with conflicts in Gaza, Ukraine, Taiwan, and other regions threatening to escalate and draw major powers into direct confrontation. Adversaries such as China and Russia are becoming more assertive and working more closely together, while non-aligned powers like India and Turkey are gaining influence and shaping events. This new world disorder is putting the institutional capacity of the US and its allies under strain and stretching their military capabilities. The increasing number of crises occurring at the same time is challenging leaders and diplomats who must manage multiple issues simultaneously, while the scarcity of military power means that resources are being spread thin. The result is a sense of disorder and a growing risk of conflict between major powers. Shiny sidewalks, scrubbed walls, San Francisco aims to sparkle at APEC meeting. The Guardian. San Francisco's reputation as a struggling metropolis in decline is being rehabilitated as the city hosts the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation (APEC) summit. The city has undergone a major cleanup by pressure washing sidewalks, cleaning streets and removing graffiti. It has also moved unhoused people to indoor lodgings. The city's mayor, London Breed, has been promoting pop-up shops, new destinations and restaurants in San Francisco's downtown, which has struggled to recover after the pandemic decimated tourism and brought about a major rise in remote work. As economic momentum falters, China strives to maintain hold on global influence. South China Morning Post. Chinese diplomats are working hard to counter the narrative that China is entering an economic decline. The country's struggling economy has raised questions about whether this is a temporary setback or a permanent change, and what it means for China's global reputation. China's economic success has given it significant influence and power on the international stage, and any perception that this success is waning could have negative consequences for the country. Chinese officials have been trying to reassure the world that China's economy remains strong and that it will continue to grow in the long term. However, concerns about China's economic outlook have led to a decline in global sentiment towards the country, and its soft power has been weakened. China's economic problems are structural and harder to fix than previous downturns, and there are concerns that declining economic momentum could make Beijing more assertive on the global stage. Some analysts believe that China's economic decline could follow a trajectory similar to Japan's decline in the 1980s, although China's geopolitical ambitions make it unlikely to follow the same path. Despite its economic challenges, China still has some bright spots, such as its electric vehicle and service sectors, and it is making efforts to attract foreign investors. However, there are doubts about whether China will be able to achieve the same level of success it has enjoyed in the past. Trump reminds us that those who take wrong lessons from history also repeat it. Washington Post. An opinion piece from Philip Bump at The Washington Post has analyzed Donald Trump's recent comments likening his political opponents to vermin. Bump argues that Trump's ignorance of U.S. history and institutions has been a defining feature of his presidency, and that his latest comments, which echo the rhetoric of Hitler and Mussolini, illustrate his lack of knowledge about the consequences of such language. Bump suggests that there are two possibilities for Trump's ignorance: either he is knowingly emulating dictators, or he has reached the same position through his own ignorance. Bump also notes that Trump has praised a range of autocrats and dictators throughout his presidency, highlighting parallels between their approaches to power and Trump's own style of leadership. Hello, viewers. It's your favorite observer from the 6 Degrees world, Dr. Six, here to deliver your daily dose of news. Today, we have an interesting mix of international stories, ranging from AI to US-China relations to global conflicts. So, let's dive right in. First up, we have the news that 45 countries, excluding China, have joined a US-led effort to create a framework for responsible military use of AI. It seems like China is taking a different approach, as they recently signed a declaration on managing the risks of AI with 28 countries, including the US and the EU. Looks like the AI race is heating up, and it's turning into a game of alliances and rivalries. In other news, private equity firms are finding it difficult to offload investments in China, as secondary buyers demand hefty discounts. It seems like the Chinese market is becoming riskier, and investors are becoming more cautious. This shift from a frontier market to an uncertain landscape is not ideal for long-term investing. Moving on, we have the much-anticipated meeting between US President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping. The focus of the talks will be on managing competition, preventing conflict, and keeping communication channels open. However, major agreements are unlikely, especially due to tensions over Taiwan. It's a delicate balancing act for both leaders, and we'll have to wait and see how it plays out. Now, let's talk about the world's growing list of crises. From conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine to tensions in Taiwan, the world is facing a sense of disorder and an increasing risk of major power conflicts. Adversaries are becoming more assertive, while non-aligned powers are gaining influence. It's a challenging time for leaders and diplomats, as they juggle multiple issues simultaneously. The scarcity of military power is also putting a strain on resources. It's like trying to juggle 6 balls at once, but with only one hand. On a lighter note, San Francisco is putting on a show for the APEC summit. The city has undergone a major cleanup, with shiny sidewalks, scrubbed walls, and even the removal of graffiti. It's a makeover worthy of a Hollywood movie. Mayor London Breed is promoting pop-up shops and new destinations to revive the city's struggling downtown. Now, let's talk about China's efforts to maintain its global influence. Chinese diplomats are countering the narrative that China is entering an economic decline. They want to reassure the world that China's economy remains strong and will continue to grow in the long term. However, concerns about China's economic outlook have led to a decline in global sentiment towards the country. It's a tough balancing act for China, as declining economic momentum could make Beijing more assertive on the global stage. In the world of finance, global stocks were in a narrow range as investors focused on US inflation data. The market is seeking clues on whether global interest rates have peaked. It's like trying to read tea leaves to predict the future of the economy. Lastly, we have an interesting opinion piece analyzing Donald Trump's recent comments likening his political opponents to vermin. The author suggests that Trump's ignorance of history and institutions has been a defining feature of his presidency. Whether he knowingly emulates dictators or is simply ignorant is up for debate. One thing is for sure, though, Trump's leadership style has drawn parallels with autocrats and dictators around the world. Well, that's all the news for today, folks. Remember, these are just quick summaries, so feel free to dig deeper and form your own opinions. And now, it's your turn to join the discussion. What are your thoughts on these news stories? Do you have any burning questions for Dr. Six? Let's hear your ideas. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.